You're listening to Edwin Eisendrath's It's the Democracy, Stupid on WCPT 820.
All right, everybody, welcome back. I have an enormous treat for you because I'm joined by Gillian Brockwell, who is a fabulous, careful, thorough, experienced journalist who has turned those talents towards one of the most important and least visible issues in America, and that is what our tax dollars are paying for in terms of ICE flights and what that means for who we are. Gillian, thank you.
Thank you for having
Gillian.
me. Yeah, it's Gillian with a hard G.
Yep, sorry, I apologize.
That's
I knew
okay.
that, and thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
I have so many questions and so much I want to talk to you about. And I guess I want to start with the letter you wrote to the Denver City Council, right? They're preparing for a vote on a matter that tangentially, at least, involves ICE. One of the sentences in that letter took my breath away. You wrote, I'm just going to read, employees for ICE's charter airlines have told me in recent months that in an event of an emergency, they've been instructed to save themselves and leave the migrant passengers to die.
Yeah.
And I want to start there just to understand the mindset of people around that are dealing with it. Who says that?
I think it's people say that when they have been dehumanizing other humans for so long that doesn't seem like one of the most heinous things you could say. The problem is that on ICE flights, every single adult and some children are shackled at the wrists and ankles attached to a chain around their waists. Before I was a journalist, I was a flight attendant. And I can tell you that one of the main obsessions of every flight attendant is keeping the aisle clear and the passengers unencumbered so that if there is an emergency, you can evacuate all of the passengers within 90 seconds. It's actually within 90 seconds with half of the exits blocked. That's what you have to train to do every year to be a flight attendant. And very obviously, someone who is wearing leg irons cannot evacuate quickly in an emergency. And this has been going on for a long time, and flight attendants have been asking for many years, asking their supervisors, asking the pilots, asking the security guards and the ICE agents on ICE flights, well, what are we supposed to do if there's an evacuation? They're not going to be able to get off in 90 seconds, and they either just don't get an answer, or they get shrugged shoulders, or they're told to save themselves and let the passengers on board die. And this isn't theoretical. We know that there have been at least 5 emergency evacuations of ICE aircraft. We only know that from discovery from a court case. So those 5 were between 2014 and 2019, mostly during Trump's first term, when there was the first surge of ICE flights. And we know 2 of the evacuation times for those 5 evacuations, and they were 2.5 minutes and 7 minutes, which is, just atrocious. I mean, 7 minutes, the plane could be entirely burnt up and everyone could die at that point, or just die of smoke inhalation. We don't know if there have been more evacuations since 2019. It's very likely that there have been, just by the numbers. But ICE doesn't report anything voluntarily.
Yeah. I report on this stuff.
Yeah.
And I've been doing this for years. I haven't lost my sense of humanity yet.
Right.
And it's
appalling.
It's appalling.
And it's happening 50 to 90 times every single day. There are 50 to 90 ICE flights every single day.
Let's talk about those.
Yeah.
First, who are the companies that are flying people around or involved in the flying people around? Because I guess
Sure.
the scheduling of the flights and the companies that fly them aren't the same. And so just help us understand the ecosystem.
Sure. So the sort of big umbrella at the top is a company called CSI Aviation. They're New Mexico based. They're ICE's flight broker. So they're actually assigning all of the flights that ICE wants to the charter airlines that participate. Their contract with the government right now is a 12-month contract. They're about 7 months in, and it's for up to $1.5 billion. And I'm pretty sure they're going to meet that ceiling. They've already spent about 800 million of that contract.
Hmm.
And that's ICE's biggest contract. It's bigger than the private prison contracts. So they hire the actual airlines, the charter airlines that participate. The airlines are probably airlines that most people have never heard of. So Global X is the biggest one. They do most ICE flights. There's also Air Wisconsin, which used to be a regional airline, but has been bought by CSI Aviation, to just charter
Just to
ICE
do this.
flights.
Yeah.
Right. There's also Eastern Airlines, which is not the Eastern Airlines of, our youth that, died in the early 90s, different company. Um, there's Omni Air International, which is someone that I've written a lot about. There are also these private jet charters. So, this is a thing that has popped up in the last few years where if a rich person has a private jet, they'll lease it to these private jet charter companies on the days that they're not using their private
Hmm.
jets.
Hmm.
And then those companies will, sell charter flights on the planes to other rich people, and they'll also do ICE flights. So there are, billionaires that I've written about who their private jets, their, luxury jets have delivered people to, absolutely hellish conditions. I'm sure we'll talk about the third country removals, but
We will.
one of them, one of these jets that's owned by these billionaires called the Desert family, who are close friends of Trump, have built condos with Trump. Their private jet delivered shackled people to a maximum security prison in Eswatini, formerly known as Swaziland.
Mm.
And right now, there's also a new private jet with this company called Talon Air. And that jet is actually owned by Joe Nakash, who is the founder of Jordache Jeans. So his private jet has done a number of these Africa removals and third country removals as well.
So I want people to know they can vote with their feet and not fly certain airlines. Nobody's really flying these airlines, but you're the one who found the boy with the bunny ears
Yeah,
getting on a Delta flight.
I'm not the one who found it. I was contacted by an activist who found
Right.
it.
You're the one who told us about it.
I'm the one who first reported it.
Yeah.
And I first reported it because he and I, we both track ice planes, so we communicate a lot. I'm the first one that reported it because he couldn't get interest from mainstream media. He had this damning video showing that Delta Airlines flew Liam Ramos and his father, the boy with the bunny ears, to Dili when they were
Right.
captured. And couldn't get interest from mainstream media. So I was
Graceful.
very, grateful that he went to me, even though I'm not a big name. And of course, the story, went as insane as we thought it would be, or went as viral as we thought it would be, because it's just horrible. I mean, what you see, he lives in Minnesota, and so he did a FOIA request because he had watched every single ICE charter flight
Right. Right.
as it loaded the shackled people during the surge, and he had never seen any children on board getting on
Right.
board the plane, or
Right.
obvious children getting on board the plane. And so when they said Liam Ramos is in Dili already, he, did
Searched for it.
some computer searches
Mhm.
and realized that Delta was the only airline, or the only flight between Minneapolis and San
Mm.
Antonio, which is the major airport nearest to
Right.
Dili. So he had been asking for weeks, "Hey, Delta, are you flying people for ICE in ICE custody?" No response. So he FOIA'd the surveillance video for the airport, got it, and then gave it to me. And
So it's a great story, but
yeah,
the reason I'm asking is less about the Ramos family and more
yeah.
about like what other airlines are doing this so that flyers can say to their airlines, Like United, I was going to get on a flight, but I'm not doing it if you're doing this.
Yeah.
So Delta did it. Who else have you found?
I
Is
mean, that's really the problem. It could be all of them, and we
mm,
just don't know. I know of at least one other Delta flight that
mhm.
transported a child from Mississippi to Texas that the Mississippi Free Press reported on. And
Good
I have
organization.
heard,
Yeah.
yeah, they're great. And I have heard of a United flight, unfortunately,
Mm,
doing these removal flights. Now, that one wasn't of children, that was just a deportation. Um, most deportations these days are, happening on board these charter aircraft with these shackled people.
good.
But some
Not
people,
good, but
generally white people, being deported to Europe are still deported, just on commercial flights, and those people aren't shackled.
okay.
Um, but in terms of transporting the children, I only know of Delta so far. The problem is nobody's talking about it.
Okay.
So it
Well,
could be all
maybe.
of them.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Um, One other thing you wrote that is stunning is that most of the ICE flights, when they're transporting passengers, are around the country,
Hmm.
and that people are
Yeah.
being shuffled around and sometimes flown around several times. That sounds very expensive and very
Hmm.
confusing and hard to understand. Why would you take a migrant who you have detained
Hmm.
and fly them from one location to another? And how common is this?
Yeah, I think that's big. One of the big misunderstandings about ICE flights is, I said there are 50 to 90 flights a day. Only 10 to 20 of those will be the deportation or removal flights. The rest are domestic. And so some of them will be these sort of roundup flights where they're taking recently captured people and flying them down to ICE's main detention hubs in the South, Louisiana, Texas, Florida, Arizona. But there are also an increasing number of shuttle flights between the detention centers. In fact, the rate of those shuttle flights between the detention centers has been way higher under Trump's second term than the regular removals. Removals have about doubled, but the shuttle flights have almost tripled. And what we hear from migrants, from immigration attorneys and rights groups is that they're using these shuffle flights to wear people down, basically to torture them, to make their court cases harder to file. Every time you're moved to a different federal district, you have to start your court case all over again. You
Mm,
have to get a new lawyer, you have to get your documents moved, and you have to do it from a detention center. You're farther away from your family. The entire time that you're being transported, you are not in the ICE locator system. So you have no way of telling your family, hey, I'm going to be transferred to Arizona tomorrow. Um, there's no way to know that. So people will just disappear from the locator system. And what we hear, I've heard this many times now from migrants, is that they'll be shuffled 5 times in a week. So basically they'll
no.
be, yeah, oh yeah, they'll go from Florida to Los Angeles to Mesa, and then they'll be put on, an 18-hour bus to El Paso. Like they'll be put in this sort of ringer, this washing machine for like a week where they're just disappeared from the locator system. Families and immigration attorneys don't know if it's because they've been deported or because they're just traveling. And then it might be days once you actually arrive somewhere before you show up in the locator system again, or before you can call your family member and say, hey, I'm in Arizona now. And, the discomfort, not being able to sleep. The food sucks just as much on ICE air as it does in the detention centers.
Well,
Um,
and you can't find a lawyer. I mean, you're like,
right,
hello, who's going to represent you? Like,
right.
oh, wait, I'm talking to my lawyer. Oops, nope, that's a different state. That's a different system.
Right.
Um,
And the reason that they do this is so that people will give up on their cases and sign voluntary, quote unquote, voluntary removal orders. And it works. People get so exhausted just being shuffled around in this system that they'll just be like, okay, just even though it's dangerous for me in El Salvador or Venezuela or whatever country,
get
I'll
me out of
just,
here.
yeah, get me out of here, and then I'll get out of Venezuela again in some other way, but just get me out of here.
Mm. So
It happens all the
cruelty
time.
is the purpose.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay. Well, that I guess means we have to talk about third country removals.
Ugh. Yeah, I mean, it's just some of the cruelest stuff I've ever heard
First,
in my
tell people
entire
what it
life.
is.
Yeah, so I'll tell you what it was supposed to be. There was this thing called the Safe Third Country Program that existed before Trump's second term. It was extremely rarely used, but it was essentially we're deporting someone, but they can't be deported back to their country of origin because they're going to be unsafe. And what we've done is we've found a third country that will take them, that will resettle them, and this country is safe. Like I said, it was rarely used. And Trump has basically
Turned it on its
bastardized
head.
that, right, and turned it into this thing where all of the people with withholding of removal orders, with Convention Against Torture orders, and legal asylum seekers who haven't had their hearings yet, they'll just scoop them up and they'll send them to another country. And so I've tracked 27 countries so far. I have a tracker of all known third country removal flights on my website. But they'll just scoop these people up and, dump them in some other country. And most of the time, the vast majority of the time, the other country is not offering resettlement, whether they're safe or not. Most of them aren't safe. But they're not offering resettlement. They'll either won't even let them leave the airport and they'll just put them on a charter plane back to their country of origin, or they'll put them up in a hotel or some kind of government compound near the airport and just be like, look, you can't stay here. So tell us when you want to go, but you can't stay here, and just pressure them to leave. This is where to begin? The ones I've been tracking the most are in Africa. So if you go up to Egypt, that corner of Africa, what they do is a lot of Russians. So they send, these are all on Omni Air International. So Omni takes Russians to Cairo. The Egyptian authorities put them on a charter flight to Moscow, and then that's that. It's a way of getting around these withholding of removal protections. And we know
But
that.
these are people that came to America because Putin will kill them.
Right.
Because
And
they
a
stood up
federal
for him.
judge has ruled that you cannot return them to Russia
Because
or
they'll be
they will
killed.
be, right.
So we
They-
send them to Cairo so they can be sent to Russia.
Yes. And we know that there are Russian dissidents who have been immediately taken into Russian authorities' custody and disappeared as soon as they get off that Egypt airplane. So we've done that a bunch of times with dozens, perhaps hundreds of Russians. And then you have, go to another corner, you've got Ghana. In Ghana, Ghana's only taking West Africans, and basically they put them in a detention center or a hotel, and they say, okay, you have to go. You can either pick a place to go, or we're going to force you back to your country of origin. So there's a woman from Sierra Leone who used to live just a couple miles from me in Maryland, named Rabia Kuyate, and she has been in the U.S. for 30 years. Her parents are here. Her parents became citizens. She was put on one of these flights. She has no criminal record. She was sent to Ghana. She's never been to Ghana. And then they physically forced her, and there's a horrible video. They physically forced her onto a bus, onto a plane, took her back to Sierra Leone, where she was tortured, 30 years ago. And so she's fled Sierra Leone again. She won't say what country she's in again, but she's in a neighboring country and just doesn't know what to do. And then if you go down to the next corner, in the southern part of Africa, is kind of the worst case scenario, and that's Eswatini. Eswatini is Africa's last absolute monarchy.
And it's
people there.
tiny,
It's a tiny country. I've actually been there. I lived in South Africa for a bit, and I did some reporting in Eswatini when I don't need to get into that story. Anyway, so what they've done is they've sent people to Eswatini on 3 different flights, 19 people. And these are people who did have serious convictions for serious crimes. But they had finished their sentences. And some of them had been out for years, up to 13 years, and had families, jobs, hadn't reoffended. Other people had been in ICE custody since their prison sentences had finished. Anyway, they sent these people to Eswatini, and they all had, withholding of removal orders, or their countries of origin refused to issue a travel document, so they couldn't be deported. So they sent them to Eswatini. Eswatini keeps them in a maximum security prison, even though they haven't been charged with any new crimes. And they're just kind of there. And the International Organization on Migration is trying to help them, but they're not really allowed a lot of access. They have a local attorney that they haven't been able to visit with. They can sometimes talk to their attorneys back in the US, but only if they're being monitored. And they're just sort of stuck there until they get a travel document. So only two people who have been sent to Eswatini have been released. One was this man, Orville Latoria from Jamaica, who was repatriated to Jamaica. And another was a Cambodian man who was repatriated just about a month and a half ago. But everyone else there is just kind of stuck. There are Cuban dissidents there. There are Yemenis stuck there. It's just awful.
How is any of this legal?
I mean, it isn't really. So there's this thing called the principle of non-refoulement. It's a US and international law that just says you can't deport anybody to anywhere where they would be in danger. And that includes chain refoulement, deporting someone to a country that's just going to deport them to the place where they would be in danger. It is against US and international law. There are a number of court cases that have been challenging this. Probably the most well-known is DVD versus DHS. So last May, in May of 2025, a federal judge, Brian Murphy in Boston, he did rule they were trying to send 7 men to South Sudan who weren't from there. And he did.
Place the United States government says no one should go to.
Right. And so the US did it anyway, or, the Trump administration did it anyway. And he ruled, this has to stop. This was against the law. And then the Trump administration appealed it. And eventually in July of 2025, the Supreme Court said, we're going to do a big ruling on all of these. But in the meantime, Trump can keep doing this. And so we've just been waiting for the Supreme Court to rule on it overall. And in the meantime, Trump has continued to do this.
Right, so this was a shadow docket deal where the Supreme Court said, this probably is illegal, but we're going to let Trump do it anyway.
Right. And Brian Murphy tried to rule again, I believe in January or February, to try and stop it. And an appeals court again said, nope, these can continue until the Supreme Court rules.
Yep.
So it is illegal. I don't know what to say.
Well, yeah, what you have to say is we have a government that ignores the law and a Justice Department that's corrupt.
Correct.
So I think just to put some numbers around this, you reported that Trump's made 34 agreements with other countries to do this. 19,000 people have been sent to 24 countries, and it's cost taxpayers $44 million.
Oh, more than $44 million. I mean, the 44 million is what we know of, and those are the payments to the actual countries. Those don't even include the cost of the flights. That's not the cost.
It's just what we
paid.
The
flights are many more millions of dollars.
It's what we're paying the Eswatinis of the world to take.
Exactly.
Okay.
That we know of. So there are a lot of agreements that we don't know the terms of.
A lot of these people who are being sent are people whose cases, I'm going to use a word that you're going to have to help people understand, pre-terminated.
I mean, right?
But back, because I want everybody to know what that actually means. So go back, explain what that is.
That's probably something that you saw in Third Country Deportation Watch, which is Refugees International and Human Rights First that runs that. So that's not my site. We
I
have a
know,
lot of the same information,
but
but
I
they have
found them
more of the
from your
legal
site.
information.
Yeah.
And I'm not actually familiar with that term.
Okay. Sorry.
So
I
I'm very
apologize.
sorry, but I
I
can't help with
apologize.
that one. Yeah,
What
yeah,
it
yeah.
means is that the Trump administration has ordered the Article 1 judges who work for Article 2 judges who work for the executive branch to simply terminate the cases before they have hearings.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, these are
That's
the
what it means.
asylum
So
seekers who are
I'm an
waiting for
asylum
their
seeker.
hearings and then they just end it.
They end it. That's what
Yeah.
that means. So you're there, you're following all the rules, you've applied for asylum because you're in danger, you're doing what you're supposed to, and instead of having a hearing, they just say no
Right.
and put you on the plane.
Right. And I mean, there's just been, and this has just exploded, in the past year
Right,
of
look,
people who came here legally, who are absolutely, quote unquote, trying to do it the right way that we hear about and end up being sent to some country that they've never even been to.
yeah. Um, okay, so
I
we're
mean, there's an example we could talk about, which is Adriana Zapata. Um, she came from Venezuela, where she was a victim of sexual violence. She was waiting for her asylum hearing, and she was sent to the Democratic Republic of Congo. She has a number of medical issues, including diabetes, and Congo said they couldn't handle her medical conditions. They tried to get the U.S. to take her back. A U.S. judge said she had to be brought back, and then DOJ said, "Oh, well, we can't bring her back because of the Ebola outbreak." So that's their position right now. Um, I mean, this is a whole other thing, but one of the leading experts on medical evacuations and high risk evacuations is now a DHS contractor. So I think it's completely possible that ICE could bring her back safely without exposing anyone to Ebola.
yeah.
But that's their position right now.
You and I are out of time. Is it true you are about to launch a podcast?
Yeah, so there's this.
So plug it. Tell everybody about
Sure,
it.
sure. It's going to be called Worst Airline Ever. We're shooting for Monday to launch it. You can support it at patreon.com/worst airline ever. And I'll be co-hosting it with a pretty well-known, although anonymous activist named JJ in DC, who also tracks a lot of ICE flights.
Well, look, your work's really important.
Thank you.
You have put your talents in a very dark place.
Yeah, tell me about it.
Yeah, so I just want to say that I hope you're okay doing it because it takes a toll.
I mean, I feel better doing it than not doing it. I would feel worse if I was doing nothing.
Yep. Well, none of us can do nothing right now. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your time. Nice to
Thank you.
have this conversation.